The school athletics field was lively. Students were warming up, coaches were shouting instructions, and the crowd was cheering for their favorite runners. Among the competitors stood a young black boy. His clothes were worn, and his shoes were old, but his eyes sparkled with determination. He had been dreaming about this race for weeks. As he walked towards the starting line, the coach noticed him. The coach frowned and walked over. He crossed his arms and looked the boy up and down. "Where are your race shoes?" the coach asked with a mocking tone. The boy hesitated and looked down at his feet. "These are the only shoes I have," he said softly. The coach smirked and shook his head. "You can't compete like that. You'll embarrass yourself. Leave the track." The boy's heart sank. He felt a lump in his throat but didn't argue. Slowly, he walked off the track. His shoulders were slumped and tears filled his eyes. He sat on the sidelines, hiding his face in his hands. The sound of the cheering crowd felt distant. All he could hear were the coach's cruel words echoing in his mind. As the boy sat on the sidelines, wiping his tears, a woman nearby noticed him. She was carrying a small bag and had a kind, gentle face. She had been watching the commotion and saw how the coach had humiliated the boy. Concerned, she walked over to him. The boy didn't notice her at first. His head was still buried in his hands. "Hey there, are you okay?" she asked softly. The boy looked up, surprised. His eyes were red from crying. He quickly tried to wipe his face, embarrassed. "I'm fine," he mumbled, though his voice cracked. The woman knelt beside him and smiled warmly. "I don't think you're fine. I saw what happened," she said. The boy hesitated, but finally spoke. "The coach said I can't race because I don't have proper shoes," he admitted. His voice was shaky. "I've been practicing for this race, but I don't have money to buy new shoes." The woman listened carefully, her heart aching for him. She nodded and said, "That's unfair. Everyone deserves a chance to compete, no matter what." Her kind words brought a flicker of hope to the boy's eyes. She looked thoughtful, then reached into her bag. "Wait here," she said gently, as an idea formed in her mind. The woman opened her bag and pulled out a brand-new pair of running shoes. The shoes were clean, bright, and looked perfect for a race. She held them up and smiled at the boy. "These were supposed to be a gift for my son," she said softly. "He's running in the same race today, but I think you need them more right now." The boy's eyes widened in surprise. He looked at the shoes, then at the woman. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. She nodded. "Yes, I'm sure. You have the heart of a champion. You deserve a chance to prove yourself," she said kindly. The boy hesitated, holding back tears. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling. Carefully, he took the shoes and slipped them on. They fit perfectly, as if they were made for him. He stood up and looked at the woman. "I will never forget this," he said, his face full of gratitude. The woman smiled and patted his shoulder. "Go out there and do your best," she said. The boy nodded, his confidence restored. He turned toward the track, ready to give it everything he had. With his new shoes laced tightly, the boy walked back to the starting line. The other runners looked at him in surprise, some whispering among themselves. The coach noticed him too and frowned. "What are you doing back here?" the coach asked harshly. The boy stood tall and said firmly, "I'm running the race." The coach scoffed and shook his head. "Shoes won't make you win," he sneered. The boy ignored him and focused on the track ahead. His heart was racing, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from determination. The referee raised the starting pistol. On your marks, get set." The sound of the gunshot echoed and the runners took off. The boy sprinted forward, his feet feeling light and free in the new shoes. The crowd cheered loudly, but he didn't let it distract him. Step by step, he pushed harder, his mind fixed on one goal: winning. At first, he trailed behind the others, but he didn't give up. Slowly, he began to gain speed, his legs moving faster than ever before. The finish line seemed closer with every stride. The boy's determination grew stronger, and he started overtaking the other runners one by one. The boy ran with all his might. His heart pounded and his legs burned, but he didn't slow down. The finish line was just ahead, and the crowd's cheers grew louder. One by one, he passed the other runners. Some looked at him in shock as he sped past them. The coach stood on the sidelines, his mouth open in disbelief. The boy's focus was unshakable. With every step, he thought of the kind woman and the shoes she gave him. He thought about proving the coach wrong. In the final stretch, the boy gave everything he had. The crowd rose to their feet, shouting and clapping. He crossed the finish line first, just as the timer stopped. For a moment, everything felt silent. The boy stood there, catching his breath, not believing what had just happened. Then the cheers erupted. People were clapping and shouting his name. He looked around, his eyes shining with pride and joy. He had done it. He had won the race. As the boy walked off the track holding his medal, he saw the kind woman standing nearby. She was smiling proudly, her eyes filled with happiness. He ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Thank you so much," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I couldn't have done this without you and your son's shoes." The woman smiled and gently patted his back. "You did this with your determination and hard work," she said softly. Her son, standing beside her, also smiled and nodded. The boy turned to the crowd, holding up his medal. He spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "This victory isn't just mine," he said. "It belongs to those who believe in fairness, kindness, and giving everyone a chance." His words were powerful, and the crowd listened in silence. He then looked directly at the coach, who stood frozen, his face red with shame. "It's not about shoes," the boy said firmly. "It's about heart and determination. Everyone deserves respect, no matter what they have or don't have." The coach looked down, unable to meet the boy's eyes. The crowd began to clap, and some even cheered loudly, agreeing with the boy's message. The boy turned back to the kind woman and her son. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did," he said. They all smiled, knowing they had made a difference that day. The boy walked away from the track with his head held high. The medal around his neck gleamed in the sunlight. People in the crowd smiled and waved at him as he passed. Some even clapped and called out words of encouragement. He felt proud, not just because he had won the race, but because he had stood up for himself and proved that kindness and determination can change everything. The kind woman and her son walked beside him. She looked at the boy and said, "You've inspired so many people today, including me." The boy smiled and replied, "You inspired me first. Thank you for believing in me." He paused and looked back at the track. The coach stood there, watching him leave. For the first time, the coach didn't look angry or dismissive. He looked thoughtful, almost regretful. As they left the field, the boy felt a sense of hope. He knew this day had taught him an important lesson. No one can stop you if you believe in yourself and stay strong. With a smile on his face and new friends by his side, he walked away, ready to face whatever challenges came next. The camera pans out, showing the boy, the woman, and her son walking together under the bright blue sky, leaving behind a day that would never be forgotten. We hope you enjoyed this story and learned a lesson. For more related stories, please subscribe our channel, and don't forget to like, share, and comment where from you watch. Thanks for watching.